In a candlelit estate on the outskirts of Manhattan, a secret threatens to crash one of the most anticipated society weddings of the year. The groom, multimillionaire entrepreneur Charles Harrington, is about to tie the knot with a stunning heiress, while an uninvited guest with a shocking claim waits in the shadows. Beneath the glimmer of diamonds and echoes of champagne, toasts lies a hidden betrayal. The woman he left behind, pregnant and alone, has arrived with his child in tow, determined to confront him at his own celebration. Will she succeed in exposing the truth, or is it already too late? Elena Thompson could still recall the day she first met Charles Harrington, as though it were painted in gold against a perpetual sunset. It was 6 years ago, in a bustling coffee shop on Lexington Avenue, where Elena worked part-time while attending her final year at Columbia University. The rich aroma of espresso and the hum of caffeine-fueled patrons had enveloped her senses. She had been balancing a tray of steaming cappuccinos when she nearly collided with Charles, who was making a call on his phone and not looking where he was going. Their eyes locked amidst the swirling chaos, and something electrifying sparked. Charles Harrington was unlike the other well-heeled customers breezing through the shop, impatiently tapping their shoes as they ordered their expensive brews. He had an air of quiet confidence about him, and yet he was surprisingly gentle. He had apologized profusely for almost causing her to drop the tray, his emerald eyes conveying concern rather than impatience. Smitten by her grace under pressure, he offered to buy her lunch as a small gesture of amends. Elena, flustered by the attention, tried to refuse, but Charles was persistent. Although he appeared no different from the usual Wall Street types, sharp suit, polished shoes, a classic Patek Philippe watch glimmering at his wrist, there was something else about him. Elena found his invitation irresistible. The rest, as people often said, was history. She soon learned that Charles was not just another wealthy banker. He was the rising star behind several successful tech startups. His name was already whispered around Manhattan's elite circles, though he seemed dismissive of any notion that he was special. As the months stretched into a year of dating, Elena found herself swept up in a whirlwind, romance candlelit dinners, in Soho weekend getaways to his family's summer estate, in the Hamptons, spontaneous helicopter tours of the city at night. All of it felt surreal to a college student from a modest background. She had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, raised by her single mother, Camilla Thompson, who juggled 2 jobs to make ends meet. Meeting Charles felt like stepping into an entirely different realm of possibility. Yet with each step deeper into Charles's world, Elena couldn't help noticing small cracks in his otherwise flawless veneer. He was easily stressed, prone to sudden bursts of anger when deals went awry. Sometimes he went days without calling or texting. The intensity that initially drew her in also made her cautious. But Eleanor was too enthralled by his magnetism, too invested in their love story to pay heed to those warning signs. Then came the fateful evening when Charles invited her to a Harrington family gala. That was the night she realized the social strata separating them were far more complicated than she ever imagined. His parents, Richard and Penelope Harrington, considered themselves the epitome of Manhattan aristocracy. They welcomed Elena with tight smiles and lukewarm handshakes, polite gestures worn like forced ornaments. To them she was an outsider, a nameless face from an unknown world. Elena recognized the veiled disapproval glinting in their eyes. A girl from Queens, a mere scholarship student, hardly worthy of the Harrington name. But Charles, staunchly protective of her, acted as a buffer, warding off his parents' more pointed remarks. He insisted Eleanor was the woman he loved, and she was there to stay. That night, dancing in his arms beneath the glittering chandeliers, Eleanor dared to believe in a fairy tale ending. Their relationship progressed quickly, each milestone arriving in rapid succession. Elena graduated from Columbia with honors, and Charles surprised her with a small celebration party at a swanky rooftop bar. Friends from her side were outnumbered by colleagues and acquaintances from his corporate world people, discussing IPOs, crypto investments, and philanthropic galas as though they were everyday banter. 4 months after her graduation, Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news was both terrifying and thrilling. She came from a broken family herself and always longed for stability. She envisioned a future with Charles, a warm home, a child who would know both parents' love and an environment where the baby's every need was met. She had no illusions that their life would be perfect, but she was convinced they could make it work. When she shared the news with Charles at first, he seemed stunned, then quietly thoughtful. He held her hand and pressed it against his chest. Elena could feel the rapid thumping of his heart. He assured her they would navigate this new chapter together. "We'll figure it out," he whispered, brushing away her tears of relief with his thumb. But as Elena's pregnancy advanced, Charles's behavior took on an unsettling edge. He became more distant, immersed in an aggressive business expansion for his software startup. Occasional romantic dinners vanished, replaced by frantic phone calls he took at all hours. He claimed to be under enormous pressure, juggling a major deal that could catapult his net worth into the tens of millions. One night after he had come home late, Elena noticed something else, the hesitance in his eyes when she spoke about the baby. It was as though he was trying to remain enthusiastic, but the strain in his voice suggested otherwise. "I promise once this merger is done, we'll have all the time in the world," he told her, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. Days turned into weeks of minimal contact. Elena, by then nearly 4 months pregnant, felt her world tilting on an axis she couldn't control. Worried, she visited a doctor at Bellevue Hospital, Dr. Allison Carter, a renowned OB-GYN who had handled many high-profile pregnancies, including a few rumored celebrities. Dr. Carter reassured Elena that her health and the baby's development were fine. Physically, everything was on track, but Elena could not suppress the emotional turmoil swirling within. Then came the night that unraveled all her illusions. Charles had invited her to dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Tribeca, Le Jardin d'Étoiles, owned by the famous chef Daniel Boulud. Elena arrived early, expecting perhaps a romantic gesture or even a proposal. Instead, Charles walked in, looking grim. He suggested they skip dinner and go for a walk by the Hudson River. Beneath the soft glow of street lamps, he spoke in a tortured hush. He confessed that his parents disapproved of her, especially now that a child was involved. They believed she was trapping him into fatherhood. More critically, he felt ill-prepared to handle the responsibilities of a family while also working on a multi-billion-dollar merger. "The timing is all wrong," he muttered. He half-heartedly suggested an abortion, or at least postponing any childbearing. The casual cruelty in those words left Elena breathless. Fighting back tears, Elena refused. She told him that their child was not an inconvenience to be scheduled or cancelled. It was new life, a testament to their love, or so she had believed. Charles tried to paint it as him being practical, but to Eleanor it was heartbreak incarnate. She watched him slip away that night. Without a backward glance, he turned and left her standing by the waterfront, tears streaming down her cheeks, the wind cutting through her thin jacket like an icy blade. A week later, he was gone. No phone calls, no explanation, just an email with some legal jargon about settling any obligations. Enclosed was a check with an eye-popping figure. It was hush money, a bribe to keep her from tarnishing his reputation and from staking claims on his future fortune. Shock turned to fury, fury to heartbreak. Elena tore up the check and sent the scraps back in a small envelope. She wanted no part of his dirty money. In the months that followed, Elena sank into a quiet despair. The vibrant dreams she had once nurtured were replaced by the stark reality of single motherhood. She moved out of the upscale apartment Charles had helped her rent, relocating to a smaller place in Queens near her mother. Camilla, who had always been Elena's rock, welcomed her with open arms and a sympathetic ear. Determined to stand on her own, Elena took on freelance consulting work. She was well-educated and talented. Her degree in communications proved useful. She managed social media campaigns and public relations for small businesses, often burning the midnight oil to finish projects. The pay was modest, but it covered her prenatal care and basic necessities. Doctors' visits became her new normal. Each time Dr. Allison Carter would ask how she was doing emotionally, and Elena would muster a smile. "I'm fine," she'd say, though the truth was more complicated. She didn't feel fine. She felt betrayed and abandoned, grappling with a sense of loss for the life she'd nearly lived. It was especially painful on those nights when she'd wake to feel the baby's kicks, instinctively wanting to reach for Charles's hand on the other side of the bed, only to remember he was long gone. The baby arrived amidst a swirl of raw emotions. She named him Noah after her grandfather. The moment Eleanor cradled him in her arms, the world condensed into that one instant. All her heartbreak, all her doubts suddenly found a purpose. Noah's tiny hands and the soft beat of his heart against her chest gave her renewed resolve. She might have lost Charles, but she had gained a love so profound it eclipsed everything else. Within a year, Elena managed to piece together a semblance of stability. She launched her own boutique PR firm, focusing on local businesses in Queens and Brooklyn. Word of mouth spread quickly. She was talented, affordable, and above all, genuinely cared about her clients. The business grew faster than expected, soon affording a comfortable life for her and Noah. Through all this, Charles Harrington became a ghost in Eleanor's past. She heard whispers of his rising fortune, a triumphant merger, profitable ventures appearances in Forbes and Business Insider. His net worth skyrocketed. She learned he had bought a multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking Central Park, rumored to be featured in Architectural Digest. He became a regular presence at exclusive galas, often photographed smiling next to celebrities and influential politicians. She avoided such gossip whenever she could, focusing on Noah and her growing business. But every so often she'd catch a glimpse of Charles's name in the headlines. A pang of anger, regret, or sorrow would momentarily twist her stomach. Yet she made a conscious choice not to wallow, reminding herself of the child in her arms, the child she refused to let down. 2 years passed in relative peace. Noah was thriving, a bubbly toddler, whose laughter filled Elena's small apartment with joy. Their finances were stable, her firm was expanding, and life had settled into a routine that felt almost normal. That fragile normalcy cracked one afternoon when Eleanor received a surprising phone call from Michaela Ward, a former school acquaintance. Michaela worked as a socialite event planner, well connected to Manhattan's high society. According to Michaela, she had just received an invitation to a wedding of the year Charles Harrington and Juliet Ward. Juliet was no relation to Michaela, though they shared the same last name, a scion of a wealthy family with a storied heritage. Michaela called partly out of disbelief and partly out of concern. She knew about Eleanor's past with Charles. She also knew Eleanor had a child. "I thought you should know," Michaela said gently, her voice tinged with compassion. "I didn't want you to find out from tabloids or social media." Eleanor felt her throat tighten. She thanked Michaela for the information, hung up, and stared at the swirling patterns on her coffee mug. The bitterness of betrayal, once so pungent, had faded over time, but the news resurrected it. Charles was getting married. Probably in some lavish ceremony, where his parents and the city's elite would fawn over him. A swirl of questions surfaced. Had he mentioned the child he abandoned? Did his fiancée know he once paid hush money to the mother of his unborn baby? Was he living another elaborate facade, or had he changed? In bed that night, Elena watched Noah breathe softly, his small chest rising and falling in innocent rhythm. Despite all her efforts to live a life free from Charles's shadow, she found herself consumed by the urge to confront him, to force him to acknowledge the existence of his child. The next day she confided in her mother. Camilla, with her characteristic straightforwardness, told Eleanor that it might be time Charles faced the consequences of his actions. "He may be your past, but he's also Noah's father," Camilla said. "And if he's moving on so publicly, he should at least acknowledge your son." Later that week, Elena found herself turning the invitation card over and over in her hands. It had arrived courtesy of Michaela, who thought Elena might want to see the date and venue. The Harrington family had chosen an estate in Westchester County, a sprawling property, rumored to be part of Juliet Ward's inheritance. The wedding was in 2 weeks, an intimate affair for family and close friends. Eleanor was nowhere on the official guest list, of course. Yet something inside her sparked. A part of her, furious and determined, wanted to reclaim her power. She had been cast aside, but her child deserved better. The thought of Charles gliding through a wedding ceremony as if Noah didn't exist infuriated her. For days, Elena wrestled with her conscience. She was no drama seeker, and the idea of crashing a wedding felt outrageous. But after everything she had endured, after all the nights Noah had called for a father who never came, she felt a moral imperative to reveal the truth. She hashed out her plan in a series of late-night brainstorming sessions with her brother Liam Thompson, a creative type who dabbled in theatre and stage direction. She confided every detail about Charles's abandonment and the hush money. Liam, who had once admired Charles for his business acumen, now seethed with righteous anger. "That man owes you more than child support," he said. "He owes you accountability." Together they devised a quiet yet potent approach. Liam would coordinate with Michaela to find out the layout of the estate and the timing of the ceremony. Elena would arrive discreetly, stepping in at the moment when objections could be heard, right before Charles and Juliet exchanged vows. It was theatrical, perhaps even cliché, but the symbolism was too compelling to ignore. Friends tried to dissuade her, pointing out the potential for a public scandal. One close confidant from college suggested, "You're doing well without him. Why invite that chaos into your life?" But Elena remained resolute. She wasn't doing this for revenge. She was doing it for Noah. Maybe she also needed closure. One final confrontation that would let her lay the past to rest. She arranged for her mother to watch Noah until the crucial moment. Elena wanted to be sure the scene wouldn't traumatize the child, but she had also decided that if the confrontation led to an acknowledgement of fatherhood, she would bring Noah forward. It was a risky move. She had no idea if Charles would step up or further humiliate her in front of his wealthy, unsympathetic audience. When Liam brought up the possibility of legal repercussions trespassing on private property, Elena steeled herself. "Then let them arrest me," she said, her eyes shining with determined tears. "I won't stay silent anymore." On the morning of the wedding, the estate shimmered like something out of a lifestyle magazine. The Westchester sky was clear, a perfect canvas of powder blue. White roses lined the driveway, and uniformed staff directed a parade of luxury cars, Bentleys, Ferraris, Rolls-Royces. Inside, the decorations were even more opulent. Renowned floral designer Preston Bailey had transformed the grand ballroom into a garden of cascading orchids and twinkling chandeliers. Charles Harrington stood at the altar with an expression that hovered between pride and apprehension. His custom-tailored tuxedo fit him like a glove, and he exuded an air of success that his guests admired. His bride, Juliet Ward, was the picture of sophisticated beauty. She wore a lavish lace gown, rumored to cost more than most people's annual salary. Her face glowed with the confidence of someone who had never known life outside wealth and privilege. Guests mingled in hushed, excited tones. Among the crowd were notable figures, CEOs, politicians, heirs to European fortunes. Real estate mogul Donald Trump Jr., attending as a distant acquaintance of Juliet's father, was seen conversing with tech billionaire Elon Musk's representatives' names that made the event buzzworthy across social media. Rumors of a gossip column write-up in the New York Times circulated. Everything about the day projected perfection. The Harringtons were visibly elated, having finally found the right match for their son. From the dais, Richard Harrington beamed with pride, shaking hands with influential guests, while Penelope Harrington, in a regal midnight blue gown, fluttered about, ensuring every detail was flawless. Charles appeared confident, but a tension in his shoulders betrayed an undercurrent of unease. Perhaps he felt an echo of guilt, or maybe an unspoken dread that his former life could resurface at any moment. Elena arrived at the estate in a taxi, her nerves taut as a wire. She wore a simple navy blue dress, tasteful, not flamboyant. Her hair was pinned back, her makeup understated. She wanted to appear poised, not vengeful. Liam, who accompanied her for moral support, gave her hand a reassuring squeeze before disappearing into the background to signal the right timing. The staff at the gates barely registered her. Scores of additional guests, staff and contractors were scurrying around. Elena followed behind a small cluster of late-arriving guests, blending into the hustle of last-minute seatings. She slipped into the back row of the outdoor ceremony area just as the officiant began speaking. White chairs arranged in precise rows faced a flower-laden altar. The entire setting was picturesque, a snapshot of matrimonial bliss. Charles stood there, posture rigid, while Juliet glowed in her gown. Elena's heart pounded so hard she feared others could hear it. She glanced around, half expecting to be thrown out by security. But no one noticed her, not yet. She felt an overwhelming urge to flee, to abandon her plan and protect herself from the humiliation that could ensue. But the memory of Noah's tiny hands clutching her finger steeled her resolve. Then the officiant reached the part of the ceremony where he asked if anyone objected. For a second there was silence, the tension of tradition hanging in the air. No one ever spoke up in these modern times. Right, Elena rose, her heart in her throat. Her voice came out shaky, but clear enough to echo over the hush. I object. A wave of disbelief rippled through the crowd. Heads spun, eyes landed on Elena. The officiant froze, uncertain. Charles went pale, his features contorting into a mask of shock and dread. Somewhere in the front row, Penelope Harrington let out a small, startled gasp, and Richard Harrington's jaw tightened in rage. Juliet, her face momentarily seized by confusion, stepped back, gripping her bouquet, as though it might steady her swirling thoughts. Whispers erupted. Who is she? What's going on? This can't be happening. Uniformed security personnel began to move in, but Charles lifted a hand to stop them. As if compelled by a force greater than himself, he stepped forward, every muscle rigid with tension. Elena's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to break. Charles, she began, her voice carrying across the silent gathering. Do you remember me? Charles swallowed hard. Elena, he managed, voice cracking. At the sound of her name, an even greater murmur rolled through the attendees. A few recognized her, remembering her from some fleeting social function or from the faint scandal that had briefly flickered on gossip sites years ago. Elena took a deep breath and projected her words, so they were audible to everyone from the first row to the last. You left me when I was pregnant with your child. You never came back, never tried to find out if we were okay. You're about to make new vows without acknowledging the promises you already broke. The crowd was riveted. Cameras clicked. Some guests, ever social media savvy, began capturing videos. Juliet's complexion drained of color. She looked at Charles, eyes welling up with betrayal. "Is this true?" she whispered, though the microphone picked it up clearly enough for those close by to hear. Charles opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't form the words. His mind whirled panic in every corner. He glanced at his parents, who looked thunderstruck and furious. Then he scanned the crowd, realizing the potential damage to his public image. Elena's composure trembled at the edges, but she carried on. "You offered me hush money to go away. You never wanted to see your own child, Charles. For 2 years I've raised our son alone." Her voice quavered on the final word, but she pressed on, determined not to collapse. A stunned hush fell again, broken only by the hushed clamor of cameras and the rising tension in the air. Then from behind a cluster of onlookers, Liam appeared carrying Noah. The toddler clung to Liam's shoulder, wide-eyed, but calm. Gasps of astonishment mingled with pity as people took in the sight of the boy. Dark curls, green eyes that mirrored Charles's. Juliet's hand flew to her mouth. There was no denying the resemblance. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Liam brought Noah to Eleanor's side. Charles looked like a man caught in a nightmare. He stared at the child, recognition dawning in his horrified gaze. Eleanor gently took Noah into her arms. "This is your son," she said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "The least he deserves is to know who you are." Somewhere behind Charles, his mother let out an anguished whisper. "My God!" His father's face was etched in stony outrage. Security hovered uncertainly, awaiting orders. Juliet's stunned expression flickered between heartbreak and fury, her dream wedding crumbling before her eyes. Charles found his voice, though it was shaky. "Elena, I don't know what to say." "Say you're sorry," Elena shot back to your son. "Say you're sorry to him for abandoning his mother." The officiant, thoroughly flustered, closed his prayer book. The wedding had effectively imploded. Guests muttered uncomfortably, unsure whether to stay or make a discreet exit. Some stood as though preparing to witness a meltdown. Juliet turned on Charles, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Did you know she was going to do this? Did you know any of this?" Her voice cracked betrayal, saturating every syllable. Charles shook his head frantically. "I swear I never imagined she'd show up here. We ended things years ago." It was Eleanor let out a bitter laugh. "We didn't just end things. You left me pregnant. Let's tell the whole truth." She turned to Juliet, swallowing her pride. "I'm sorry to ruin your wedding, truly. But you deserve to know the man you're about to marry has a child he's ignored for 2 years. For a moment, it seemed Charles might try to salvage the situation by feigning contrition. He took a step closer to Eleanor, eyes fixed on Noah. The child stared back, curious, uncomprehending of the turmoil swirling around him. Charles's voice wavered. "Eleanor, can we talk in private?" Eleanor shook her head sharply. "No, Charles. We're past private discussions. I tried to talk before you shut me out. You only cared about your money and your family's approval. Well, now everyone can see who you truly are." Richard Harrington stepped in his face, a mask of fury. "Security, remove her at once," he barked, voice echoing. But Eleanor stood firm. Her brother Liam moved protectively closer. Some of the staff hesitated, conflicted about handling a woman with a small child in her arms. Juliet's father, Gregory Ward approached. He was a tall, stately man with a silver mane of hair, obviously incensed that his daughter's wedding day had turned into a scandalous spectacle. "This is unacceptable," he growled, glaring at Charles. "You promised us your past was clean, that there were no surprises." Charles, trapped in the vice of public shame, appealed to Juliet. "I can fix this," he pleaded. "We can talk it through." But Juliet recoiled, her eyes wet with tears. "Talk it through. My wedding is ruined, Charles, and you've been lying to me. How can I trust anything you say?" In the swirling confusion, Charles seemed to realize that any attempt to force Elena out would only confirm his guilt. He held up a hand to his father, signaling him to stop the demands for security. Then, in a strangled voice, he addressed the gathering. "My apologies, everyone," he began, swallowing hard. "I realize this is a shock. Elena Thompson and I, yes, we were together some time ago. I made mistakes." His gaze flickered to Noah, who watched him with innocent curiosity. "I wasn't ready for fatherhood. That's no excuse, but it's the truth." Elena felt a mix of anger and faint relief that Charles was acknowledging something. She held Noah close, bracing herself for the next twist. Juliet stormed forward, yanking off her veil. "Mistakes. A child is not a mistake, Charles." She fixed a searing glare on him, heartbreak twisting her features. "I can't believe you. You told me you'd never been serious with anyone before me, just a few flings. You lied." The officiant looked ready to flee, and the disconcerted guests began whispering more intensely. Someone from the Harrington side tried to usher older relatives away, while on the Ward side, a few furious glances locked on Charles' condemnation, thick in the air. Elena took a trembling breath. "I'm not here to humiliate you, Charles, but you turned your back on us. If you're going to promise your life to someone else, you should at least face your responsibilities." He bowed his head, exhaling shakily. "You're right," he whispered, voice carrying to those closest. "I'm sorry, Elena. Truly sorry. I was a coward, and I don't know what to say." As the confrontation reached its pinnacle, the officiant made the only call he could. "I think we should pause this ceremony," he declared. A wave of tension released, replaced by a buzz of hushed conversation, as guests recognized the wedding was effectively cancelled, or at least postponed. Juliet's face hardened. She tore off the delicate diamond earrings Charles had gifted her. "Keep your apologies." She spat tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm not marrying a man who lies about fathering a child." A murmur of approval rippled through some of the guests, especially from the Ward side, who glared daggers at Charles. Richard Harrington tried to approach Juliet, presumably to salvage the alliance, but she brushed past him, fleeing the altar with her mother in pursuit. Meanwhile, security finally stepped forward, politely but firmly asking Elena to come with them away from the ceremonial area. She considered resisting, but realized the main confrontation was over. She delivered her message, shattered Charles' pretense, and forced him to confront the child he had abandoned. As she and Noah were escorted away, Eleanor felt a complex swirl of emotions, vindication, sadness, regret for Juliet's heartbreak, and a strange pang of closure. The wedding might have ended in disaster, but at least the truth was no longer hidden. In the days that followed, the high society meltdown became fodder for every gossip column and social media platform. Tabloids published grainy snapshots of the moment Elena stood up with Noah in her arms, effectively halting the ceremony. Some reporters used sensationalist headlines, "Millionaire groom's love child exposed at altar." The Harrington family went into damage control. Their public relations team frantically churned out statements, emphasizing that family matters should remain private, and that Charles intended to resolve all issues amicably. Charles, on the other hand, stayed out of the public eye, presumably to avoid the press's merciless scrutiny. Juliette retreated to a private estate in France, refusing to speak to Charles. The Ward family threatened legal action for breach of contract, as the wedding had been part of a complicated family business merger. It was rumored they demanded compensation for the embarrassment suffered, and the lost advantage of tying their name to the Harrington empire. Meanwhile, Elena returned to her life in Queens, shielded by the local community. She politely declined interview requests focusing on her business and caring for Noah. She found that most of her clients sympathized with her, and a surprising number of people reached out on social media to express support. However, she also received hate mail, anonymous messages accusing her of gold digging or orchestrating a public spectacle for attention. Some threatened legal action on Charles's behalf, claiming she had trespassed. But no official suit followed. Elena suspected Charles wouldn't dare not when he had so much more to lose from prolonged publicity. 2 weeks after the ruined wedding, Elena heard a knock at her apartment door. When she peered through the peephole, her heart lurched. Charles Harrington stood in the hallway looking disheveled and exhausted. She hesitated, but eventually opened the door slightly, the chain still latched. He gazed at her with haunted eyes. "Elena," he said, quietly, voice hoarse. "May I come in?" She studied him for a moment, scanning his once immaculate suit, now wrinkled with dark circles under his eyes. Against her better judgment, she closed the door, undid the chain, and reopened it. Charles stepped in, cautiously, his gaze flicking around the modest apartment. Noah, playing with blocks in the corner, noticed Charles. He looked up curious but remained silent. Charles's face twitched with an emotion Elena couldn't decipher. Regret, sorrow, guilt, perhaps all of the above. "I owe you an apology," he began. Elena said nothing, letting him speak. He took a shaky breath. "I was a fool. I let my fear, my ambition, and my parents' expectations come between us." His voice broke. "I've ruined so many lives." Juliette called off the wedding. "My business deals are under scrutiny. My parents are furious, but none of that matters as much as—" He trailed off, glancing at Noah. Elena folded her arms. "What do you want, Charles? I'm not here to help you repair your image. I did what I had to do." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know you're not. But I realize now. I hurt you deeply, and I hurt Noah by not being there from the start. I want to make it right if I can. I'm not looking for forgiveness overnight. I just want a chance to know my son." Elena's resolve wavered. Part of her longed to shut the door on him forever. Another part, the part that cared about Noah's future, recognized that children benefit from knowing both parents provided the parent is responsible. "What does make it right mean to you?" she asked, her voice tight. Charles approached, slowly crouching to Noah's level. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, forcing a small smile. Noah blinked, uncertain, clinging to Elena's leg. "I know this is scary, but I'm your dad." Noah merely stared, his toddler mind processing the new face in front of him. Elena's heart twisted at the sight. She had imagined this moment so many times, Charles's first interaction with Noah. She had never predicted it would be so raw and strained. After a long pause, Charles stood. "I want to be part of his life," he said, addressing Elena again. "Financially, emotionally, whatever it takes. If you'll let me. I know I have no right to demand anything, but I'm asking." Elena regarded him carefully. She didn't see the suave, confident millionaire. She saw a broken man, regret hanging on his every word. Could he truly change? Did she dare trust him again? For a moment, she flashed back to the day he left her by the Hudson River, talking about how the timing was wrong. She also recalled the wedding day fiasco and all the condemnation that followed. Finally, she inhaled deeply. I can't promise forgiveness, but I won't block you if you're sincere. We'll move slowly. Supervised visits at first. You have a lot to prove. Charles nodded, relief shimmering in his eyes. Anything. I'll do anything. Over the next few weeks, Charles began visiting Noah under Elena's watchful eye. They started with short daytime visits in a local park. Noah was shy at first, but children are remarkably adaptable. Soon he warmed up, letting Charles push him on the swing, showing him his favorite toys. Elena observed these interactions from a distance, her emotions roiling. Friends warned her to keep her guard up. They questioned Charles's motives, suggesting he was merely trying to salvage his public reputation. Maybe he was in part. But Elena also sensed a genuine remorse in his eyes. He made repeated efforts to help financially. Elena, still wary of hush money, insisted on a formal agreement through a family lawyer. If Charles wanted to support Noah, it would be through an official child support arrangement. No more discreet checks slid under the table. Charles agreed without hesitation, wanting to demonstrate his commitment. In parallel, the Harrington name reeled from the scandal. Business partners demanded accountability. Charles's parents publicly distanced themselves from his personal issues, fueling tabloids that thrived on the drama. Privately, they pleaded with Charles to settle matters quickly and avoid more negative press. "Fix this or we cut you off," his father threatened. But Charles, for once, seemed more concerned with forging a relationship with Noah than with pleasing his family. One afternoon, Charles appeared unexpectedly at Elena's door, a large envelope in his hands. After she let him in, he hesitated before passing it to her. "These are partial custody forms," he explained, softly drafted by my lawyer. "I'd like to formally establish visitation rights, maybe even partial custody, if that's something you'd consider." Elena's pulse quickened. The thought of losing full control over Noah's upbringing terrified her. Yet she recognized that Charles had parental rights. Legally, he could push for custody. She reminded herself that a stable father figure could benefit Noah in the long run, assuming Charles remained stable. They discussed it over coffee. Eleanor made it clear that any arrangement would be contingent on Charles, proving he could be a positive influence. She wanted no involvement of the Harrington fortune if it meant spoiling or overshadowing the simple life she had built for Noah. Charles surprisingly understood. "I'm not trying to buy his love," he assured her. "I just want to be his dad." As the months passed, Charles's presence in Noah's life grew incrementally. He started picking Noah up for short day trips. They visited the Central Park Zoo, the Natural History Museum, and once even spent a quiet afternoon at the Queen's Public Library, reading storybooks. Elena monitored everything closely, and so far Charles showed genuine effort. Meanwhile, Elena's PR firm flourished. The dramatic wedding incident had brought her name into the public sphere, and some sympathetic potential clients reached out. She also had to fend off scandal-hungry journalists. Through it all, she maintained a dignified silence, focusing on her craft rather than sensationalism. One day, Charles showed up with a timid request. "Noah's been asking me a lot of questions lately about where I live. He's curious. Would you be open to seeing my place so he knows it's safe?" Elena hesitated. In truth, she was curious too. She had heard about Charles's opulent penthouse in Manhattan, a symbol of his wealth. After some deliberation, she relented. "Fine. But I'm coming along. I want to make sure everything is appropriate for a child." So one Saturday, Elena took Noah by taxi to the penthouse. She braced herself for garish extravagance, but she was surprised to find a modern, tastefully decorated space. There were a few child-proofing additions, corner guards on tables, locked cabinets clearly installed in anticipation of Noah's visits. Charles guided them around, pointing out safety features with a touch of pride. He had even prepared a small bedroom for Noah, complete with a soft blue comforter and a shelf of children's books. The sincerity of his effort moved Elena in ways she hadn't expected. She felt an unspoken sense of hope. Maybe people could change, after all. Despite the steady progress, Elena struggled with distrust. Memories of heartbreak resurfaced whenever Charles cancelled a visit last minute due to business demands. She feared his parents might interfere, or that Charles's interest would eventually wane. She spoke often with her mother and Liam, who advised caution. "He's trying," Camilla acknowledged, "but remember how he left you alone before. Make sure you protect Noah." At the same time, a small part of Elena wanted to believe that redemption was possible. Charles's interactions with Noah seemed genuine. The child's face lit up whenever he heard Daddy's coming over. Was it right to deny them the chance for a real bond? As time went on, Charles found himself at a crossroads in his professional life. The scandal had left some deals in jeopardy, and he was forced to restructure. The Harrington brand was tarnished, no longer the golden child of Manhattan's business scene. His parents tried to push him into a prearranged marriage with another heiress to restore the family's credibility, but Charles refused. Eventually, the Harringtons summoned Charles for a family meeting and insisted he bring Elena and Noah. The invitation filled Elena with dread. She had no fond memories of Richard and Penelope, but Charles urged her to come, hoping it might lead to acceptance. They arrived at the grand estate one Sunday afternoon. Marble columns, manicured lawns, and generations of old money pride surrounded them. Richard greeted them curtly. Penelope offered a stiff smile and bent awkwardly toward Noah, who clung to Elena's leg. Over tea in the drawing room, Richard spoke first. "Your actions caused a scandal. We must find a solution that protects the family's reputation." Charles sat up straighter. "My priority is my son. I won't abandon him or Elena." Penelope tried to soften the blow. "We're not suggesting that, dear. Just discreet boundaries. A trust fund, perhaps. Something private." Elena's eyes narrowed. "You're talking about your grandson like he's a liability." Richard's face darkened. "Young lady, you crashed our private affair." Charles cut in. "This is my responsibility. I made promises and broke them. Blame me, not her." Tension crackled in the air. Noah whimpered. Elena scooped him up, gently rocking him. Charles stood. "If you can't accept my family, my real family, then I'm walking away. For good." Richard looked ready to explode, but Penelope hesitated. Something in Noah's innocent gaze gave her pause. Finally, Richard exhaled. "Fine. We'll make an effort. But the damage is done. You'll have to live with the consequences." Charles nodded, unshaken. Elena, though wary, felt something shift. Maybe not acceptance, but a step toward it. A tepid truce formed. The Harringtons began inviting Elena and Noah to family gatherings. The atmosphere was formal and stilted, but a faint thaw emerged over time. On Christmas, Noah received an extravagant array of gifts, which Eleanor insisted be balanced with simpler, more meaningful presents at home. While Eleanor still harbored deep distrust for Charles's parents, she appreciated that they were at least trying. The real transformation happened in Charles himself. He seemed more grounded than ever, turning down certain business deals that clashed with his newly embraced values. To demonstrate his commitment, Charles publicly announced the existence of his son in a carefully worded press release. He apologized for past secrecy, citing personal failings. Reactions were mixed. Some lauded his honesty, while others accused him of spin-doctoring. But Elena noticed how less guarded he became, as if shedding a burden he had carried too long. Noah, now nearly 3, responded with unbridled joy whenever Charles arrived. They built forts in Elena's living room, pretended to be pirates hunting for treasure, and watched animated movies. On weekends, Charles sometimes took Noah to philanthropic events geared toward children, making a conscious effort to show him the importance of empathy and charity. Eleanor, watching from the sidelines, was overwhelmed by a mix of gratitude and lingering hurt. Every so often, she glimpsed the memory of the man who once abandoned her, overshadowed by the man who was now trying to make amends. Could she let go of the past enough to embrace a peaceful future? Late one evening, Charles dropped by unannounced, carrying a box of old photos. "I found these in my storage unit," he said, stepping into Eleanor's apartment. Pictures from when we were dating. They sifted through the photographs at her kitchen table, memories pouring forth silly selfies in Central Park, a candle-lit dinner on a yacht, the two of them laughing on a Ferris wheel at Coney Island. Elena felt a tug of nostalgia. She remembered how deeply she had loved him and how thoroughly he had destroyed her trust. "I regret everything I did to you," he confessed, not for the first time. "If I could go back, I'd do it differently. But I can't change the past." Elena folded a photo of them smiling, arms wrapped around each other. "No, you can't." She paused, eyes burning. "But you can keep showing up now. For Noah." Charles reached for her hand, but she pulled away. She wasn't ready for that kind of forgiveness, not yet. Months glided by, and the delicate new balance held. Charles established a formal custody agreement, spending weekends with Noah and contributing significantly to his upbringing. With each passing day, Noah's bond with his father grew. Elena's business continued to flourish, allowing her to buy a small house in a family-friendly part of Queens. One afternoon, Charles arrived with an unexpected request. "I'm going to be in Tokyo for a conference. It's a week-long trip," he said, glancing nervously at Elena. "I was wondering if I could take Noah with me. We'd have a separate nanny, top-notch accommodations. He could see another part of the world." Panic immediately flared in Eleanor. The idea of her toddler being so far away felt terrifying. "Charles, that's a big ask," she said, swallowing her apprehension. "He's never traveled internationally without me." Charles nodded, anticipating her hesitation. "I know, but I'd love the chance to spend extended time with him. You're welcome to come too if your schedule allows." Elena stiffened. Was this an invitation or a manipulation? She studied Charles's face, earnest, hopeful, maybe even a bit scared. She thought about what was best for Noah, and also about her own potential for bridging the gap with Charles. After days of anxious deliberation, she agreed to accompany them with the understanding that she'd manage her PR work remotely. The trip to Tokyo proved surprisingly harmonious. Charles had important meetings, but he carved out time for Noah and Eleanor to explore the city. They visited the Tokyo Skytree, wandered through the ancient temples of Asakusa, and indulged in sushi dinners. Noah was enthralled by the neon lights and polite culture. On their last evening, Charles asked if Eleanor might join him for a dinner, without Noah leaving the child with the nanny at the hotel. She agreed, feeling a knot in her stomach, unsure if this was a date or a cordial dinner. Over sumptuous Wagyu steaks in a private dining room, Charles opened up about his journey since the wedding debacle. He spoke of therapy sessions, introspection, and attempts to break free from his parents' controlling influence. "I won't lie. It's been tough," he admitted. "But every time I'm with Noah, I realize I want to be better. And I still have feelings for you, Eleanor." Eleanor blinked, caught off guard. "Charles, you broke me once. I can't just forget that." He nodded, pain etched on his face. "I understand. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking for a chance to earn your trust again, step by step." Silence stretched as Eleanor's heart pounded. A swirl of emotions from old love to lingering resentment competed inside her. Eventually she spoke quietly. "I don't know if I can ever love you the same way again. But I also can't deny that you're Noah's father, and seeing you care for him does something to me." They ended the night in a cautious embrace, a fragile promise to remain open to possibilities while acknowledging the scars they both carried. Returning to New York, Elena found herself facing a swirl of opinions from friends and family. Some urged her to give Charles a second chance. Others warned her to tread carefully, lest she repeat the past. Charles continued to show consistency. He never missed a weekend with Noah. He attended parent-teacher events at Noah's preschool. He even joined Elena and her mother for holiday gatherings, enduring Camilla's skeptical glare with patient humility. Slowly, against her better judgment, Elena began to lower her guard. She noticed how Charles beamed at Noah's every little achievement. She saw how he turned down lucrative but morally grey business ventures, focusing instead on philanthropic projects, particularly those benefiting single mothers and underprivileged kids, a cause that struck a chord in him after witnessing Elena's struggles. One late winter evening after putting Noah to bed, Elena and Charles found themselves alone in her living room. The soft glow of a single lamp bathed the space in warm light. They talked for hours about everything, her aspirations, his regrets, the possibilities for the future. Eventually, their conversation ceased to be just words. A tentative closeness formed, culminating in a gentle kiss that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar. Navigating this rekindled relationship was no fairy tale. Trust issues flared whenever Charles had to work late. Elena wrestled with internal doubts, replaying old memories of his betrayal. But Charles showed up consistently, reaffirming his commitment to both her and Noah. After nearly a year of gradual reconciliation, Charles made a heartfelt proposal. Not the grand spectacle with paparazzi or a diamond the size of a golf ball, just a simple moment in Eleanor's living room. Kneeling with a modest ring, he said, "I don't deserve you, but I love you, and I love Noah. I want to spend the rest of my life making it right. Will you marry me?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She remembered the heartbreak, the public humiliation, the ache of raising Noah alone. Yet she also felt the tangible change in Charles, the sincerity of his repeated efforts, and the deep bond forming between father and son. "Yes," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'll marry you." The wedding that followed was nothing like the first. It was held in a cozy garden behind Eleanor's new home in Queens. The guest list was small, mostly close friends, family who had supported them through the rocky years. Juliet Ward was obviously absent, though Elena had sent a quiet apology for the turmoil. The Harringtons attended penitent and subdued. Richard and Penelope looked out of place in the humble setting, but tried to mask their discomfort with polite smiles. No elaborate flower arches, no $1,000,000 designer gown, no paparazzi. Elena wore a simple off-white dress, Charles a classic navy suit. Noah, wearing a tiny matching suit, stole the show by running down the makeshift aisle to hand them the rings. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, a ripple of laughter passed through the crowd, an inside joke about the dramatic events that had once shattered a wedding ceremony. This time no one spoke. Instead, Elena and Charles exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising faithfulness, patience, and an unwavering love for Noah. Tears glistened in the eyes of friends and family. Even Richard and Penelope seemed moved possibly by relief that their son had finally found stability and redemption. The ceremony ended with a gentle kiss, a far cry from the spectacle that had dominated tabloids years earlier. In the years that followed, Elena and Charles faced challenges blending their worlds. The Harringtons still preferred galas and elite circles, while Elena cherished quiet weekends in Queens. But they compromised. Charles attended fewer high society events, and Elena occasionally joined always on her terms. Charles invested in charities supporting single parents, and pushed for policies helping struggling families. It was more than PR, it was personal. He became a present, caring father. Noah thrived between both homes, grounded by Eleanor's love and enriched by Charles's stability. Trust between Charles and Eleanor grew slowly rebuilt through honesty and effort. Therapy helped. So did time. The pain of the past never fully vanished, but it softened. Each year on their anniversary, they visited the Hudson River, the place where Charles had once walked away. Now they stood together, hand in hand, watching Noah play a living reminder of how far they'd come. Their story, once a scandal, had become one of redemption and love earned, not inherited. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of heartbreak, resilience, and ultimate redemption. Elena's determination to confront the truth, even when it meant crashing a high society wedding, revealed the depth of a mother's love. Through twists and trials, both she and Charles found a way to rebuild not just their own shattered lives, but also create a stable, loving home for their son Noah. It's a reminder that life's greatest challenges can pave the way for remarkable transformations if we remain courageous enough to confront our mistakes and seek forgiveness. If you found this real-life drama fiction novel inspiring, or if you simply love a good story filled with unexpected turns, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Help us continue bringing more compelling tales that tug at the heartstrings and remind us of the power of hope, love, and second chances. See you in the next video.